Week 5 had 4 top 10 upsets. It also broke the record for the most top 25 upsets in a week so far this season. This year's crazy, and I hope it continues to get crazier, and I hope that craziness benefits my Michigan Wolverines, who got a huge win in Madison. Today I'm going to review Week 5, discuss it, analyze it, break it down, discuss my new top 25, and talk about winners, losers, and my biggest takeaways. So let's get right into it, into the best sport. And here's my top 25. Part of me wanted to raise Georgia above Alabama. I'm getting closer and closer to doing it. But Nick Saban being Alabama's head coach and also the way they dominated Ole Miss prevents me from doing so. Iowa solidified any questions about being worse or better than Penn State, who I think actually in power rankings is no longer even the best team in their own division, but we'll get to that in my Big Ten power rankings episode tomorrow. Cincinnati, if Iowa didn't bludgeon Maryland and force 6 or 7 turnovers, Cincinnati, with the win they had, would have probably surpassed Iowa. They win out, they're a playoff team. Pure and simple. Ohio State at 5, they blew out a Rutgers team who is definitely improved and, held Michigan pretty close. And I think Michigan's a pretty good football team. I did not expect us to beat Wisconsin the way they did. I thought we would force 1 to 3 turnovers, around there. But I did not expect us to offensively capitalize the way we did. We capitalized in every way. Granted, we did, I forget I think it was 2 field goals. No, we had 3 field goals, which, is not the greatest thing in the world, but still points are points. And our defense looked amazing. I think Ohio State, everything into consideration, their defense looks a lot better. CJ Stroud looked like an elite QB. I think they're the best team in the East now. Penn State, I actually do think they're the 3rd best team in their own division. That might sound insane. I think Michigan's performance and the way their D-line played and some of Penn State's weaknesses and just, the fact they only scored 24 points on an Indiana team who had, to be honest with you, quite frankly, little to no offensive production. Penix got hurt, but I have them ahead of Michigan because I'm waiting for a few more confirmations from Michigan in their upcoming schedule, mainly the Nebraska game. However, I think both of those teams are better than Oklahoma and better than Kentucky. Kentucky's certainly on the rise. I did not expect them to beat Florida. Will Levis is good enough of a QB to carry this team to a 10-3 and perhaps an even better record under, Mark Stoops. And I'm excited to see where that goes. BYU at 10. BYU, we got to be honest here. We all expected this team to go 7-6 or 8-5, or some even said 5-7 or something. But Kalani Sitake has really outdone himself here. Zach Wilson, major parts of that team left, and Tyler Algier looks good, and their whole team looks good, and they have plenty of Power 5 opponents, including USC, left on their schedule. They win out. Cincy loses. They could replace Cincy for that playoff spot. Not kidding you. They're number 10 in the major polls. I think that's a very appropriate place for BYU. Coastal Carolina, they're not playing an impressive schedule, and for now I had to bump them down. I felt like other teams, mainly BYU and Kentucky, deserved to be ahead of them. Oregon is still in the top 10. I have no clue how. Their quarterback play isn't atrocious exactly, but it isn't good. And with Arizona State's offense, with UCLA's offense, with Utah having a solid defense, I don't I don't think, even if they win out, I don't think they deserve to be a playoff team with how weak their conference is. I just don't think they do. Ole Miss at 13th, I had them at 8th. They might be a little too high, but again, I think Alabama and Georgia are they're in their own category. They're miles ahead of Iowa, Cincinnati, Ohio State, and Penn State, and everyone else. They're miles ahead. So I think them bludgeoning Ole Miss simply means that Ole Miss is just probably not a top 10 team. Just probably not. Arizona State at 14. Now, they were cutting it close with UCLA, and in the end, they dominated that game. And I felt like, you're 4-1, you lost to a number 10 team in the country in BYU, and part of that reason was because of turnovers. I think Arizona State outgained BYU in total yards, and it was an away game. So this is me giving Arizona State the benefit of the doubt and seeing that they, and we'll get to this later, they might be a pretty darn good football team. Michigan State only rose a spot. I felt like they might have deserved to even drop with their defensive performance against Western Kentucky, but they got a win, and other teams ahead of them had even worse performances, so they deserved to rise. Oklahoma State beating Baylor, I don't really see why people think this is close to a top 10 team. I mean, I think that Baylor, they're 4-0. The only team they beat of significance was Iowa State, and we don't know if Iowa State's going to bounce back or not. So I was just a little more cautious with them. Florida and Arkansas had terrible losses. They're still top 20 teams, but I don't think they're top 15. NC State barely skid by Louisiana Tech, but I felt like it was appropriate to give them one rise. Texas surprised me and beat TCU. And Bijan Robinson had an amazing day. They didn't even have 200 passing yards, but they had over 200 rushing yards. And Texas has struggled to beat TCU in past years. So for Steve Sarkisian to come in here and in year one beat TCU is pretty huge. Notre Dame, you might have expected me to drop them, but they were close with Cincy at the end, with nearly half of their stadium overtaken in red. So I do feel it is appropriate that this team is top 25. And I feel like they're going to improve as the year goes on. They'll probably finish with 9 or 10 regular season wins, is what I'm thinking at the moment. Wake Forest at 22. They beat Louisville, who had a winning record. And because of how weak the ACC is, I need to see more before I proclaim them as top 20. SMU, Air Raid, Sonny Dykes. It just is what it is. Amazing QB play. 5-0. They could possibly give Cincinnati some fits. We'll see. And Auburn did their business in Tiger Stadium. And absolutely, Bo Nix was dodging people. LSU couldn't tackle. And, Bo Nix was, in a certain sense, the star of that game, as much as I hate to say it. So Auburn is totally, at this moment, a top 25 team. And then Brady Hoke entering in the polls. 4-0. They beat Utah. Looks to kind of be on the rise. And I think they have 1 or 2 more Pac-12 opponents. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Tell me in the comments below. I dropped Baylor. Fresno State lost to Hawaii. I do not know how that happened. A&M got Mike Leached, and UCLA lost to Arizona State. So those are the teams that dropped. I would say UCLA and A&M are still close to my received votes category. I would also say that Nebraska, if they beat Michigan, they will definitely be ranked. And I will also say that in a certain sense too, if Tennessee wins some of their upcoming games, this sounds insane. Mississippi State's also in my received votes category. Tennessee dominated. Watch out for them. That's my top 25. And now we go to our takeaways. And my takeaways are Georgia, their defense is phenomenal. Blocked kick for a touchdown. You shut down a team that destroyed Texas. You shut them down. You shut them out. 37-0. The yardage total wasn't even that much of a difference. I don't even think Georgia got 400 total yards of offense, and Stetson Bennett was their starter. If JT Daniels was that team's starter, this game would have looked exactly like the Vanderbilt game. Exactly like that. And Arkansas would have been even more broken. I mean, I thought that Arkansas was overrated by being 8th in the first place anyway. They don't have the talent. It's year 2 of a rebuild. And to be honest with you, I feel like Michigan State, in a certain sense, is being set up the same way, being number 11. Kind of feel like that, but I don't know yet. And that goes into the next point of the Big Ten East being absolutely loaded. I mean, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, all in the top 11. I mean, that won't last, obviously. And I think one of those teams is going to get, and I'm thinking it's State, is going to get, destroyed by the other 3. I mean, it could be Michigan, it could be Penn State. I don't think it's going to be Ohio State with their improvements, but the East is loaded. Rutgers beat all their non-conference opponents, I think so far at least. Maryland beat all their non-conference opponents. It's crazy. Indiana, their non-conference loss was to Cincinnati, who is arguably a top 4 team at the moment. The East is loaded. It's going to be really interesting, like as conference play continues to go on, what all happens. The SEC West. Why did I say West? The SEC West is weak. That's why I said it. Outside of Alabama. Ole Miss losing the way they did. A&M losing to Mississippi State. And really, LSU. I don't even want to talk about it. Coach O, as much as a meme as he is, and a legend, and the fact that he commanded one of the best teams in the history of football, is going to be fired at the end of the year. You lose to Auburn, and the way you lost to them is humiliating because you can't tackle. Lost to UCLA. You have A&M. You have Alabama. You have Ole Miss. And you got Florida too. Right there, I'd say 2 or 3 of those losses are absolutely guaranteed. Oh shoot, you have Kentucky too. If LSU were to drop all those games, LSU is a losing season, and the fan base will crack and rage, and he'll be fired. The West just is not... And Arkansas too. Arkansas being humiliated. There may be a top 20, top 25 team, but the only great team, or maybe, the only great team, great or above in the West, is the team who's constantly elite, and that's Alabama. And Arizona State could be the best team in the Pac-12. Who would have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? Arizona State against UCLA. And this is one of the few games I'm going to bring stats into because I'm not the most confident about my expertise on Pac-12 teams. Do not watch that area as much. 463 total yards for Arizona State versus 435 of UCLA. UCLA had 1 fumble and was 2 for 5 on 4th downs. Definitely contributed to the loss. That right there tells me why they lost. Also, Arizona State with more passing yards and looked to be also the more efficient passing game. Zach Charbonnet was held to 4 yards a carry, which is still pretty good, and DTR also led on the ground along with leading in the air. So him kind of seemingly carrying that team on offense might also say something. With how Oregon lost, Arizona State, we all knew, had a quarterback coming in, and Herm Edwards is certainly a good coach. Could Arizona State be the best team in the Pac-12? Could they be? Let me know in the comments below. And finally, Texas controls its own destiny heading into Oklahoma. They beat TCU. That's all I'm going to say. You know, if they didn't beat TCU, I would be making fun of Texas here. I'd be laughing myself to sleep. Because the joke is Texas always starts in the top 15, and then one of Gary Patterson's mediocre teams absolutely embarrasses them in one capacity or another. And that didn't happen. That did not happen. Ever since Arkansas just rolled over Texas, it'll be curious to see how these two teams compare in the end of the season. Texas has been on fire, put up 70 against Texas Tech. Granted, they allowed 35. And they beat TCU, and that game was not going to be a blowout one way or another, and they beat TCU. That's always a close game. Josh Pate said it best. People who thought that Texas or TCU is going to blow out each other don't know that rivalry well. That never happens. It's rare. I don't even know if it has ever happened, if any team has ever had a lopsided victory in that series. But Texas controls its own destiny. They beat OU. That one loss was non-conference. They can afford to take another loss and still reach the championship game in Sark's first year. That'd be a good feat for him, and I'd say even if he loses the Big 12, just making it in his first year should cement some of his job security. And finally, the losers and winners. The SEC West, again, outside of Bama, it did not look good. I don't believe Auburn is a great team. I just think they beat a, quite frankly, worse LSU team, a team that could struggle to go bowling. Oregon and Notre Dame, Notre Dame, with just looking at how much red was in their field, the way they played, the muffed kickoff return, the fact that since he scored 17 points in, a quarter, and dominated that game, and Notre Dame had to fetch kind of a last-minute comeback, that was humiliation. And that was a breaking of a long home game win streak. Oregon, the way they lost to Stanford, and I made a video about this, they had it, and they dropped it. They had the golden egg in their hand. It could be turned in for millions of dollars, and they dropped it and it cracked. They controlled that game in the entire second quarter, and they just couldn't finish. The targeting, the PI, the passing with, under 2 minutes to go, which is just, it's so asinine. I don't know who called that, but whatever. Matt Corral, he only had one touchdown against Alabama. Their team did not look as good. Bryce Young is, in my opinion, obviously overtaken him in the Heisman conversation. And we'll get to Kenny Pickett later. But Kenny Pickett should, at this point, overtake Matt Corral. I don't care that Corral is good. He's really good. But Pickett, you'll see here in a few seconds. And finally, Coach O. Coach O, I said this earlier, he's toast. He is toast. Absolutely toast. This is the first time, not even Les Miles lost to Auburn at home. Think about that. Long, deep pause. Let that sink in. Let the juice sink in. That's horrifying. That stadium, listening to it, second half on my phone. This stadium is silent compared to Beaver Stadium and compared to other areas too. What's going on with LSU? You win a national title and then you try to come back and whatever and try to look good. Max Johnson's playing phenomenally for the lack of run game. Just go away. Leave. Lose to Bama by 40. And I guarantee you LSU fans would agree. Ed Orgeron has to get out of there sooner rather than later. Honestly. The winners, Kentucky. You beat a team who I thought could challenge Georgia. And now looking at the fact that you beat them, Georgia will probably manhandle Florida. But we still don't know. That was wow. Wow. Kentucky controls its own destiny too. You're 5-0. Kentucky has Georgia. They have LSU. I think that's I think that's about it on their schedule. Like, honestly, you're in good freaking shape. You just are. You're in really good shape. And Will Levis is competent enough at quarterback. You have a really good run game, and you always have solid defenses. You're in good shape. Good for you. Cincinnati and Auburn. Auburn getting its first win in Death Valley since 1999. Cincinnati breaking Notre Dame's home game win streak. Desmond Ridder looking good. And Cincinnati, they went out. And I'd actually argue if the chaos continues, Cincinnati might be able to afford a loss to a ranked SMU and still get in. And that sounds crazy. Guarantee you that might happen. Cade McNamara proved he can pass. The dude has an amazing deep ball. Still needs to improve on some of his short, medium accuracy. Dude also has some of amazing pocket awareness. Wisconsin at points obviously got behind their O-line. They have one of the best front seven in the country. I mean, Jack Sanborn, Leo Chanel. Don't even get me started. He dodged all the defenders who got in the backfield, all of them, in your own end zone. Dude shifts away, and a Wisconsin defender's ankles snap, and he falls. Another instance, it's penetration, almost gets sacked, escapes, rushes out toward the sideline, throws, it's caught. Dude has good pocket awareness. And I'm not saying he's amazing. He doesn't deserve a Heisman or any quarterback award, but he proved he can pass. Let me tell you something, too. It's not necessarily a big winner. Michigan O-line's really elite, too. Kenny Pickett. Better QB than Cade McNamara, kind of flying under the radar. He is fourth in passing yards, 1,731. 19 touchdowns, second in the nation. 90.1 QB rating, second in the nation. Only one pick. What more can you ask for? Honestly, this guy's flying under the radar. Under the radar. Did I also forget to mention that the dude apparently, he can apparently run 142 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 3.9 average. He's at a long of 20. Dude can scramble when needed. Dude's flying under the radar. And Pitt? The computers might overrank him, but Pittsburgh can totally win the ACC here if they play their cards right. And Kenny Pickett, after this, should totally deserve being in the Heisman conversation. That's all I have to say for this video. If you liked it, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Join this awesome community by, again, liking and subscribing, and tell me your thoughts down below. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say, and I love discussion. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.